Okay, welcome to the webinar, Augmented Reality for Work Instructions. This webinar is primarily intended for manufacturing audience. So if you are more service-oriented, we will have an additional webinar, similar thing, but focused on service in June. And I'll talk about that more at the end. But this webinar is focused on augmented reality for work instructions, primarily for manufacturing, with a main focus on Vuforia expert capture. So as people are still gathering, I'll just take 1 minute here before I get started. So I am Jack Riley. I've worked with worked for PDSVISION for the last 2 years as the AR and IoT manager. Before that, I worked for PTC, and I've been in the AR space for the last 7 or so years. All right, so we can get into it here. So I want to start with talking about pain points that manufacturing is currently facing in America, and start with every factory I've gone to, every factory I've talked to, this comes up of an aging and retiring workforce leading to a loss of domain knowledge. So the best workers, the most knowledgeable workers are nearing retirement age, and manufacturing companies are having trouble attracting and retaining younger talent in order to replace those aging and retiring workforce that's leaving soon. Most manufacturing workers are over 45, and you know it's coming soon with people with the best workers retiring, and then there needs to be a plan to capture that knowledge, share it, and replace it. So that's a significant pain point that's currently facing manufacturing. Another one, every factory I go to, one of the first questions I ask is, how do you currently onboard people? And almost all of them have something written down that they say, we use this binder. And I ask to see it, and normally we have to go to a manager's office, dust off a 3-ring binder, and we flip to the right page, and they say, oh, well, that's not how we do it anymore, actually. So even if there is a process documented, it's often inaccurate, out of date, maybe hard to find. Not everyone will have seen it. And then even if all that isn't true, it's, the work instructions are up to date, easy to find, accurate. Often they're still hard to follow. And so that leads to people not following the right instructions and not knowing what to do, which leads to a slow onboarding and long time to productivity for new hires. And that's coupled with high turnover, especially for new hires. So you'll have somebody who takes 3 months to train up until they're productive, and they leave after 6 months. And so your best case scenario, you're getting 50% productivity out of them before you go back down to 0% and start over again. And part of that is just because of how complex the work instructions can be. And so your new hire is onboarded. They're maybe being mentored by one of your subject matter experts, and they're learning these procedures, and then they don't want to keep asking questions again and again and feeling like they're dumb or they're not getting it. So they try it on their own without asking questions, and they make a mistake, leads to scrap or rework. And then the results of that are, especially in the aerospace manufacturing, that mistake could be a $100,000 part that they scrap. And then they just don't show up the next day because they just say, I just made a mistake that cost my company more than I'll make in a year. Why would I come back to that? I can work for the same wage, less stressful, less high stakes somewhere else. And so that leads to high turnover. So yeah, we'll keep going through pain points right now. As always, there's always a demand for safety compliance. I think almost every factory has safety information posted all over the place, but often it isn't incorporated into the work instructions themselves. And so maybe new hires get taught the safety information, get taught the compliance information, but they're on step 3 and they're not aware of safety risks that they might face. So we want to make sure that that safety information is in their face when they need it, so that they're not running into a safety issue. One pain point that I think isn't talked about enough that I think is key is an over-reliance on key subject matter experts to fill in all the gaps. And so what happens is you have a new class of hires, and you take your best worker off the production line, have them train the new hire, um, and then that new hire gets trained for 3 months, leaves after 6, and you just wasted all that time training them. All that productive time that you took your best worker off the floor um, is wasted now. Just walked out the door. You also have these productive workers maybe pulling overtime to handle the scrap and the rework of new hires, um, doing something they're not as comfortable with. Maybe they're really good at their job, at building whatever they build, but they're not as comfortable training somebody, not as comfortable leading a class. And so now these really productive workers who are maybe nearing retirement age might be looking at their watch and their calendar saying, I'm not liking what I'm doing anymore. I'm overworked. I'm having to pull all this overtime to meet my demands, and now doing work that I don't like as much, having to leave the floor, leave what I like to do, and do this. And so now they might be saying, maybe I'll retire a year or two early. So all of these are sort of intermingled of um, the slow onboarding time leads to over reliance on the subject matter experts, which leads to them retiring early. So all of that is intermingled. And then lastly, younger workers just don't want to be trained in the traditional ways that we have been training workers for decades. And I'll cop to, I'm guilty of this just as much as the next person. When there's something wrong with my car or my house, I don't go open up my owner's manual. Um, I go to YouTube and I look at a video of someone fixing it, and that's how I prefer to consume information, and that's how most younger workers also want to be trained. So kind of in summary of that, the current state is training programs, onboarding people is costly, it's ineffective, poor retention, both of information and as a result of employees. And then the paper instructions, if you have them, they're hard to follow. It's not what people want to use. You also have an issue of maybe the people who get trained up by somebody on Monday get the right information, but then a different person trains another group on Tuesday and they miss information. They don't have the same information, or your subject matter expert, had a bad day and didn't share everything that they're supposed to, and now that whole class of trainees don't have information that they need to do their job effectively. And then capturing that expertise is time consuming. So having to take, again, your best worker off the floor, maybe sit them down with your tech pubs or have them write up something themselves to document the procedure in their head. All that takes time, takes your workers off the factory floor, um, cuts down on productivity. And so it results in just inefficiency in general. So labor and training costs go up. You miss production targets because there's scrap, rework, et cetera. People are having to pull overtime to handle additional training, resulting in delays and downtime, or scraps and rework because somebody didn't have the instructions they needed to, or couldn't follow it, or made a guess because they weren't sure. They didn't want to bug their mentor again. And so all that, is an issue. And then adding to that, safety compliance, obviously always important. Um, we definitely have people come to us after near misses or after safety issues because they realize how important this is, and how um, they need to have the instructions right in their face as they're going through it. So the goal with AR is to transform those work instructions. So giving your workers what they need, the information they need at the right time in the right context, nothing more, nothing less. So on the left is a traditional binder of information of work instructions, and what might happen with this is page 1 through 10 are all safety issues or safety instructions, lockout and tagout instructions, but they're your workers on page 60 going through their process, and so they might skip all the way through those safety information without you ever knowing, even though you have it documented. They're not seeing it at the time they need it, and so it's useless in that regard. And so the goal would be to, if there's a safety concern on step 3, have a warning on step 3. Tell them, watch out for this. If there's something you need them to log on step 6, have an option for them to log in on step 6 rather than relying on, some other paper floater that's floating around a job runner. So the kind of a big takeaway with AR is that, I'll just repeat, it's about delivering the right information in the right context at the right time. Nothing more, nothing less. You want to make sure they have all the information they have without distractions that aren't necessary. So here is an example of a customer we worked with that they have their before AR and their after AR situation. So before, they had a couple of rock stars who could just pick up work instructions right away, do it quickly and efficiently, and have it be done correctly. But in general, it was hard to predict, non-standard. You have some people do a really good job. Some people take longer, don't do as well, go slower, all over the map, basically. With AR, the goal is to standardize that. You still have your rock stars doing rock star work, but everyone else comes up to that level because they have all the information they need. They're armed with the technology they need to do the work, and that helps to just standardize your procedure, so you can know how long it's going to take. You can plan staffing better, and then you don't have to worry about having a subject matter expert go and look over their shoulder the whole time. So the goal would be to standardize this, have it be repeatable. It's always all your processes that you have in manufacturing should be standard and repeatable. We want your training to be standard and repeatable as well. So just in general, some benefits of AR for work instructions would be improving workforce efficiency. You're not having to take your subject matter expert off the line as much. You have quicker time to training, or quicker time to productivity with your training. Reduce costs, so less scrap, less rework, less overtime for somebody having to help out with that. Less and less of that, and then all that results in increasing revenue. And then one thing that a customer recently told us was, so just in general, the ability to attract and retain talent is obviously an issue with manufacturing, and AR helps to be more interesting for the younger generation of how they want to actually work, but it also gives anyone who's using it more confidence that they have basically an expert in their pocket who's able to tell them what to do. They don't have to constantly be bugging a more senior employee, more senior worker for questions, and they don't make as many mistakes, and so they're more confident, and they feel like they can do their job and they have the tools they need to do their job. So these are the results of a Forrester AR value finding study, and they found that with AR, there's a 50% reduction in new hire training time. So if it took you 3 months to train somebody, now it'll take a month and a half. There's a 60% faster document creation, 5 to 10% reduction in waste and rework, and the payback is less than 6 months. And I think I'll say this in a moment, but expert capture, I found, is the fastest way to capture and distribute work instructions, to capture a process and share it to your workers. And the last thing I'll note here on the screen is just the improved, especially employee satisfaction. I think I mentioned it on the last slide. Having employees who feel like they're supported, they have the information they need, keeps them around, lowers turnover. Nobody wants to feel like they're dumb as they're doing their job. They want to feel like they know everything and they're not having to bother somebody or make a mistake that then costs more than their yearly wage. So I've been talking so far about pain points and then about benefits. Now, and sort of for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to get into the technology itself. And if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I probably won't get to them until near the end, but feel free to put them in the chat. So the three pieces of technology I want to talk about are Vuforia Chalk, Vuforia Expert Capture, and Vuforia Studio. So this is part of the Vuforia suite that PTC's created. And I'm going to spend most of my time focusing on Expert Capture. That's what the majority of this presentation will be about. But I'll start with just mentioning Chalk and Studio and giving you a quick overview. So I'll let this play. So Vuforia Chalk is for real-time expert help. So if you're a new hire, you're even an intermediate hire, and you have a question, maybe your expert's not there, your subject matter expert's not there, they're in another state, in another part of the factory, you can call them and get assistance in real time. This is really useful for unique one-off situations or really time-sensitive things that need to be answered by a real person. And as you can see here, the expert's able to mark on the screen, and that shows up in the 3D space. So it's not like a FaceTime where it would just be showing up on the screen itself, and if you move, it's now not in the right spot. Here, the augmentations stick to the screen, and the user is able to move around and have it still live in the 3D space. And at the end, it gives you a readout of all the different augmentations that were done. So that's really useful if you're like me, where you're asking for help and you say, okay, yeah, I got it, and hang up, and then you say, shoot, what was that first thing they said to do? And so here it gives you all the different steps of the augmentation, and you can save that, use it for later. I also regularly tell customers that if you find people are calling about the same thing again and again, that might mean that your work instructions are not good on that step. You need to update those, make it more clear. So this is a really useful tool to kind of know, to fill in the gaps between your prepared instructions and kind of one-off wonky situations that maybe don't come up again. But if you find the situation comes up again and again and again, that's where I would suggest making an expert capture procedure or updating an expert capture procedure about that. I sort of view Vuforia Chalk as the a la carte menu and expert capture as the actual menu. And so you can get your meal, but also add an extra question here. Vuforia Studio fills a similar niche as expert capture in that it's prepared work instructions. The biggest difference between the two is that Studio is hosted on premise, and so that solves any issues with ITAR compliance issues, whereas expert capture is purely SaaS based. Another big difference is, as you're seeing here, let me make sure this is playing. Studio has the ability to do complex CAD animations. So if you have CAD and you want to show how something goes together with the model itself, you can show that in the 3D space. And so both of these examples, it's augmenting on top of a physical part. Let me pause this one. On the right, you'll see kind of difference between augmenting on a physical part versus putting CAD just in 3D space. And so this is another thing that Studio does really well, that expert capture does not do, which is you don't have the model in front of you, you don't have the CAD in front of you. You want either remote training or kind of this is what could be. So on the right, you're seeing a factory layout. And so you can, the classic is put your engine on your desk and rotate it around. That would be, again, a Studio supported task. On the left here, I'm illustrating just a QA process where you're tapping parts and saying if there's anything wrong with them, and then submitting that to ThingWorx. So submitting it to an IoT system. This is kind of a forward direction. You could also show sensor information. So if you have PLCs, sensor data, et cetera, you can show that in your AR experiences too. And that again would be a Vuforia Studio use case. But today we're going to talk mostly about expert capture. And like I said, expert capture is the quickest way to capture and distribute expert knowledge. And so it's made up of 4 parts that I'll go through here. But the first is capturing. So you give your subject matter expert, either a RealWear or a HoloLens. And I will say that coming soon is you can do this with an iPad as well or a phone. But for right now, it's RealWear and HoloLens. And they go through and they just do their job saying next step whenever is appropriate. That capture then comes into expert capture. You bring it in. It comes in already broken up by step. So if there's 10 steps to this procedure, you get 10 steps already broken up. If they took a photo on step 2, you have a photo that comes in on step 2. Users can then edit the video, edit images, bring in additional video or images. So often if I'm doing a capture and I say, hey, it would be really great if we had a video of just the place in general, or we forgot to take a close-up of the control panel and we take a quick photo, you can always bring those in as well. I've also seen a lot of starting with a safety blurb, sort of nicely prepared safety information at the very start. You can have that, bring that in, and have that be part of the procedure. You can also bring in your CAD models here, and have each step be associated with a different part on the CAD model. And then you hit publish. You hit publish once, and it's available on phones, tablets, headsets, computers, whatever you prefer for whatever work stream you're working on. Those users then can follow along. They have the latest version. They're able to have that expert guidance in their head as they're going through it. They have the ability to add feedback, take photos, and then all of that gets logged to Vuforia Insights. And so there you have insights into who did the procedure, what's their name, how long did it take, how long did each step take, did they complete every step? If you required it to have a pass-fail option, did they say that step passed or did it fail? Did they take any photos, leave any comments? So all of that shows up in Insights, and you're able to filter that, sort it, and export it, and then do any additional analysis you'd want to do on it. And this is just a visual of what the experts look like as they're wearing the headset. On the left is Expert Capture. Both of them are wearing the Expert Capture headset, or sorry, the RealWear headset. So it's a monocular device that they can see. Here is the camera, and here is a screen. They can see what they're capturing. And then on the right is the HoloLens as he's going through and capturing. So that's binocular, so it covers both eyes. All right, so here is just going to be a screen recording of me doing a capture for Expert Capture, so you can see the full unedited version of what an expert would be seeing as they're capturing the content. And again, the goal is we train your expert up in 5 to 10 minutes, show them how to use it, and then they can just go and do their job. They don't have to leave the floor to talk to us about what their process is. They can just do the job, capturing what they think is important. And then we can always supplement that with additional materials. And they're just saying next step. So I probably won't play the whole thing, but I'll at least get it started here. Ensure that your new spool of filament is free of tangles and that the tip of the filament is free of any debris or stringing. Take picture. Next step. If there's any debris or stringing at the tip of the filament, use scissors to cut at a 45-degree angle. Take photo. Next step. Go to the back of the 3D printer and press the on button to turn the 3D printer on. Take photo. Next step. Using the control knob, navigate to the control temperature nozzle section and set the temperature to 190 degrees. So I'll pause it there because it's more of the same. But this is using a RealWear headset. You can see all the blurbs on the bottom. Those are voice commands you can use. You can take photos, place bookmarks if you need, and then go next step. And the goal of this, again, is just to capture that first-person view of what is the expert actually seeing. If you make a mistake, it's really easy to just either pause or just place a bookmark down and say, delete this, and then go next step and do it again. In this example, I'm narrating as I'm going. I'd say it's kind of 50-50 if experts generally want to narrate as they're going. Sometimes it's distracting, so you don't have to. If the worker wants to just do their job in silence and say next step every time it matters, that's easy to do as well. So then this is what comes into Expert Capture. So this is with no editing done at all yet. There were 8 steps. It comes in with 8 steps already. You can see I took photos on step 1. those show up already in step one, and I can go from there. So here, if I wanted to add additional resources that already exist, I can click here and bring those in, and then I can do the editing the video. And actually, I have a video of that here, so I'll display as well. So again, this is just the raw material. Generally, I would sit here and with my headset and just make sure that
Go around to the back.
If there's audio, the audio is correct. I'm not cutting it off at a weird point, making sure that I get the full step of what I want to capture. Here I have the option to record new audio or remove audio. So if you wanted to do a voiceover, have a more clear enunciation, or wanted to capture once and then have a version in English and in Spanish, that's a really easy way to do that right there. Just copy the whole video, do voiceover, and do it in Spanish or whatever other language you'd like to support. So that way you can very easily and quickly do multiple language support without needing to go and capture it in Spanish or whatever. You can also, if your user, let's say your expert doesn't want to take photos as they're doing because it's distracting as well, it's really easy to just take screenshots of the video with this photo button here, and that way you can take photos really easily there as well. You can also edit them, so add circles and different labels and different augmentations to the images themselves. One thing to add here, you can also splice the video. So if there's they drop the tool in the middle of it, you can cut that out and splice two videos together here, and then save it and have it be kind of one smooth video. In addition to that, you can add CAD models. And so I'll have a video of that here in just a moment, but you can associate each step to a different part in the CAD model, and then the procedure will guide the user, in this case, around the back of the machine to the on button, so that they're not lost saying, I don't see the on button anywhere. How do I do step one? And so here's that video. So I click add 3D model to procedure. I choose my step. And then here I have the option to either do a part marker. So I'm selecting an individual part of the model. I also have the option to, I'll get to that in one moment here, but I can do a part marker or a point marker. So if your CAD comes in hierarchical, it's easy to choose the correct part. If it's more of like a scan or you don't have every part individually, you can also use a point marker to guide the user to the correct spot, roughly, without needing to have all the CAD segmented in the right order. I wanted to show this section. So by default, you're able to have each step have either no feedback, confirmation, so just a check mark, or pass or fail. When you have CAD models, you also have this additional option of pass fail with step check. And step check is an artificial intelligence model that's image based, that'll tell the user, after you train it, it'll tell the user, is this in a fail state or pass state? So especially kind of near the end of the shift on a Friday, maybe people are getting a little sloppy, it'll alert the user, hey, this looks like it wasn't installed correctly. This Clico isn't where it should be. This plug isn't installed, etc. So it gives them a little warning there. And I mentioned training, so this would be what the training looks like. So when I have this step has step check enabled, and the first time I do it, it asks me to train it. And how you do that is just come here, fill in as many hexagons as you want by just orienting the camera based on sort of what angles you expect your workers to come in at, and then it uses those. So this case, I'm saying this is a pass state, and it uses that to train the AI. How is this good or not? In general, people use the recommend setting, and so that'll be kind of what I just told you. It'll just alert the user, hey, this is in a pass state, or hey, this is in a fail state. But if you're going for speed, there's an auto proceed feature where the AI will just, if it's pass, it'll go pass and then next, and go through as many steps as you have enabled. So you could turn a 10-minute QA process into an under 1 minute QA process where it's just clicking through and confirming based on the AI. So you have both of those options. And this is what it looks like in kind of the final product. On the left is when it just locks on and it's thinking if it's lined up correctly. If it is lined up correctly, it'll give you the middle image, and then I moved it away, and so now it'll give you the fail state. It'll say this is not correct, and the user can either mark that as it's not correct, or they can fix it in that moment. So it builds QA and inspection into your work instruction process. And then at the end of your editing process, when you're happy with it, you can click publish, and then the users can view it, like I said, on phones, tablets, computers, HoloLens, RealWear, and you can make a Word document. And so what that looks like is here it'll strip away videos, but any images, any text, it gives a box for feedback, any CAD models you incorporated, all of that will show up here. So if your compliance requires you to have written instruction as part of the requirement, even if you're using digital and before you expert capture work instructions, you can still have this as the compliance side of things. Okay, so I'm going to let this play. This is the final product of an expert capture, what your new hires would be seeing. Grab your new spool of filament and ensure that it's free of tangles. If there's any fraying at the tip of the filament, cut at a 45-degree angle to allow it to be easily fed through the extruder. Go around to the back of the 3D printer and press the on button to turn the printer on. Here I'm clicking confirm, and so that'll be logged to Insights. Under the control settings of the 3D printer, navigate to the temperature section and then nozzle, and change the nozzle temperature to 190 degrees. Once the nozzle reaches 190 degrees, compress the filament guide spring and push the filament forward until it extrudes out of the extruder. At that point, you should be able to pull all the filament backwards out of the extruder. Remove the old filament from the spool holder, ensure that there are no tangles in the filament, and store in a cool, dry place. Grab your new filament spool and place it on the spool holder, ensuring that it rotates freely and there are no tangles in the filament. And here I'm adding feedback. I'm going to take a photo, and this gets logged again to Insights. And so I have photo confirmation that I did what it told me to do. Compressing the filament guide spring, thread your filament through the filament hole until the filament begins to extrude out of the extruder. And here's our first kind of live example of the AI. If I move it to the different spot, now it tells me it's failing, and it looks like it's not quite back there. So this is sort of an edge case where it's not sure, and then when I move it to the right spot, it says yes. And so at the end of my session, I hit submit, and that gets logged to Insights. So just as a sort of reminder, this is what the CAD guidance looks like. These are the parts that I chose in the editor. It's highlighting them when it's in view, and when it's not in view, it guides me to the right spot. That way I'm working in the correct area all the time. And here's just, I wanted to show one other example of the step check, just because I think this is a really powerful feature. So this is again just showing, or this is just showing a wire harness and how it should be connected. And on the next step, it's going to have a step check AI step. So this is saying, guiding the user to the right spot and saying that should be plugged in, it's not. So right now it's alerting me that it's not correct. And so once it's fixed, it shows me that it is correct. And in this case, the step requires you to take a photo before you move on. So all of that, you create or you capture the procedures, you edit them, add steps, add text, add images, the user views them, and then all that, all the view data shows up here in Insights. So you can see who viewed what, when, how long did it take, did they give any feedback, take any photos? I can let this play here. Did they go to all the steps? If they skipped a step, it'll let you know. Did they leave feedback when you required them to leave feedback? So you can see some I omitted feedback, some I left feedback, and you can see any comments and any photos taken as well. And then here you can sort by date. So by default, it's last 30 days, but you can sort by time and date, by username, by procedure, etc. And then you're able to export that as a CSV, bring it into any other software you want to either store as historical data or to run analysis on it. So those were the four sections I wanted to hit on: the capturing, editing, publishing and viewing, and then the backend insights to gain information from your procedures. Here is a customer we worked with recently. They were having an issue, which is I'm sure common in the manufacturing industry, of their new hires were unsure about the instructions. They were hard to follow. They were having trouble translating the 2D work instructions into the 3D space they were looking in front of them. And so they were making mistakes, putting things in the wrong spot, not putting things where they should go. And the result was sometimes very expensive scrap. But at a minimum, rework that takes time and hurts productivity. Using expert capture, they were able to simplify their work instructions, make it easier to follow, and then again, incorporate QA into their process. And so they were able to come here at the end of the process and say, are they all installed correctly? Yes or no. And that worker can fix it at that time before it goes on to the next step, where potentially a rework issue becomes a scrap issue, or a rework issue becomes a longer rework issue. So they were able to fix it in real time without needing to go grab a QA inspector or go grab an expert. They can have that expert knowledge in their hand and fix it in real time. And this is the customer. I said that one of the main benefits they also mentioned was just improved employee confidence. People were much more happy to do their job, much more confident they could do their job, and as a result, they had less turnover and people stayed longer. So I covered 3 products, obviously expert capture in the most depth today, but here's an idea of sort of when would I use each product. And Fourier Chalk is pretty simple. If you need real-time expert support, Fourier Chalk is your option. They call an expert, have them guide you through it. Studio, if you require on-premise installation, for example, ITAR compliancy, Studio is the option you go with if you need IoT connectivity, or if you want to show complex CAD animations in 3D space, or if you want to show your engine on a desk, show the CAD model without it being created yet. That's where I would recommend Studio. If your goal is, hey, we need to capture expert knowledge quickly before it walks out the door, expert capture is what I'd suggest. It also has the QA options we mentioned, as well as being able to incorporate the CAD that you have into your procedures, and yeah, allows you to do tracking that you might not otherwise have. A lot of times I go to customers and they have no idea how long or how many hours they're spending on a process because they don't have a way to track that easily. So this incorporates that tracking. It eliminates often the need for paper-based logging. You can incorporate that into the same process. And then editing and updating the procedures is also very easy. If something changes and you have to change step 3, historically you'd have to go collect all the old annotate information, update the whole process, publish it out again, get it approved, etc., and then redistribute it. Here, if step 6 changes, you can either just update the instructions if it's that simple, or if you need a new capture, you can have your expert go out and just do step 6. You bring that into that step and you can publish it out whenever you need. And instantly all your workers across factories will be having the latest version whenever they update their iPad again, or scan the QR code the next day. So those are that's the overview of the expert capture with that. Today has been mostly focused on manufacturing. We do also have in June an expert capture for services webinar coming up. So that'll be again talking about expert capture, but covering it in a more services-based approach. And yeah, so if you have any interest in that, if you have service, we'd love to see you there as well. I haven't seen any questions yet in the chat, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them while we have a few more minutes here. But if not, that is the session. Yeah, thank you all for your time. I hope this was informative. You have my email address from this, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me if you'd want to see something more specific. I'm also happy to work with you on that. But yeah, if nothing else, thank you all for your time, and yeah, have a good rest of your day.